Hi, what's up guys, TSJAwesome 628 here, back again with another F1 2020 video, this time for another episode of my My Team career mode, the fourth race of the season at the Chinese Grand Prix. We managed to claim our first win last episode at the Vietnam Grand Prix, so it was a good performance from us, and there were a lot of overtakes, so it was quite a good race overall. And, well, we'll get straight into this episode with our sponsorship deals. So, we just need to renew some sponsors, and well, I'm not sure exactly if I'm renewing exactly the same ones, but I'm signing with Zen Dynamics, and we were going to go for Satellite again, but I think that's one we're not going to go for because we couldn't meet any of their goals, so it may be better to go for something such as Sudo, which has a large goal bonus, but the goal is actually achievable. So I think that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to go into our activity timeline, and we're going to do a sponsor advertisement for the vehicle, and we're also going to do some aerodynamics equipment upgrade, and then we're also going to do some G-force training, I think, for Daniel Ricciardo. So it'll be good to help our teammate out if we want to win the constructors. So we're just going to advance through some time, I think, and then we're going to go forward to the race weekend, and we'll see what the weather forecast is like, and then we'll get into practice and qualifying.
Our new parts have been completed without issue. They'll be on the car ready for the next race weekend.
So, as we load into the laptop at the Chinese Grand Prix, we're going to go across and we're going to check the weather forecast, and it is completely dry. So, not had a wet race yet this year. It's been 3 dry races so far, and it looks set to be a 4th one in a row, which isn't a bad thing. I'm not brilliant in the wet. But we are going to make a couple of upgrades. We've got 2,000 plus resource points, so we're going to look to upgrade the powertrain side of things. I was just debating whether ERS or fuel is more important, so I decided to go for a fuel efficiency upgrade, and then we're also going to go for weight redistribution upgrade on the chassis side of things. And now we're down to 15 resource points. So into qualifying we go, straight into Q1, and had a bit of a wobbly exit to start our first lap, but it shouldn't cost us too much time as we head through turn 1 and up through the, I don't know what you call it, what section, I don't know what you call the section, but it was similar to also the one at Malaysia. It's very similar starting section, but I don't think there's really another track that has a section like it that's currently on the calendar. But anyway, with our first lap we put us P2, and by the end of the session it's P3. Daniel Ricciardo set a brilliant lap to be a second quicker than us in Q1, but then as expected it is both Williams last and the Alfa Romeos and Haas's in the 4 positions just above them also being knocked out. So no surprises in this session really. Everyone that we'd expect to make it through has made it through, with Danny Fiat the one that theoretically just makes it through, even though the gap is 4 tenths between him and drop zone. So Q1 is pretty much a non-session for pretty much all teams except for Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams, because they're expected to make it through. And if they do fail to make it through, then they must have had something go wrong. On to our first lap in Q2 then, running slightly wide through the first couple of corners, and trying to make up the time though through the rest of the lap. And as we get to the final corner, we're going to see where this lap is going to put us. It's 1:29.1. It's currently fastest, but as we fast forward to the end of the session, this is P5, Again, we're 1.2 seconds this time behind Ricardo, who has looked very quick so far in these first 2 sessions. But I think he did this at Vietnam, where he dominated qualifying and then just wasn't quick in the race. So maybe again that will happen. Leclerc, Perez, Ocon, Giovinazzi, and both AlphaTauris get knocked out in Q2. So both runners, both AlphaTauris. Antonio Giovinazzi is probably a shock to be knocked out because the Racing Point drove a very quick car. Lance Stroll has done very well in the Racing Point this year, but I don't think Giovinazzi has quite got to grips with his Racing Point yet. And Leclerc, I guess, behind Vettel, is probably a shock. On the first lap in Q3 we do go slightly wide and don't get the optimal line through the final corner, but we're still going to try and set a quick lap, so it shouldn't cost us too much time. So we head through the first section of corners, a better run than we got in Q2, not running as wide, and hopefully it'll be a decent banker lap. We did set a purple sector 1 momentarily, and as we head through the final corner, it's going to be a 1:28.9, which currently puts us P4 behind both Mercedes and Daniel Ricciardo. And as we fast forward later on in the session, we remain in P4, and now this is our last lap, and hopefully going to be our quickest lap of qualifying as we look to try and improve our position up the order. And we're already 4 tenths up, but as we head across the corner, hopefully 4 tenths is enough for pole. And is it going to be enough for pole? Yes, it is. So, not finding that much time in the second lap. It was only 4 tenths, which for me I often find like 6 or 7 tenths in the second lap.
Let's have a quick look at those who will be fronting the grid. Thomas, Bottas and Lewis Hamilton. With qualifying complete, all that remains is the main event. We'll be live and uninterrupted for the Grand Prix tomorrow, so make sure you join us then.
But yeah, it was quite close in the end. Obviously, we took pole position, but it was only 400ths or so ahead of Valtteri Bottas, and the top 4 were separated by just over a tenth and a half, with Ricciardo, after his promise in Q1 and Q2, only managing P4 in the grid. So he'll be very disappointed with that. Verstappen takes home P5 and what's effectively best of the rest, and then Vettel outqualifies Stroll to take 6th, with Stroll 7th. Alex Albon is 8th in the other Red Bull, and then come the 2 McLarens of Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris to round out the top 10. So hopefully in tomorrow's race we can convert from pole position.
After yesterday's exciting qualifying session, Thomas lines up on pole position and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Hamilton, Ricciardo, Max Verstappen and Vettel, Stroll, Albon, Sainz and Lando Norris, Perez, Ocon, Antonio Giovinazzi and Kvyat, Gasly, Magnussen, George Russell and Roman Grosjean, Latifi, Aitken, Leclerc and Nick de Vries.
So as we head into the race strategy, it looks like it's just going to be 2 stop here, with going on to from the softs at the end of lap 4, so they really don't last that long around it, and then going on to 2 different sets of mediums. So I think it's what the strategy of the team suggests to us, so hopefully it is the right strategy. Obviously we'll have to watch out for maybe some of the midfield teams that start outside the top 10 that can do the one stop starting on mediums, and maybe they'll be able to challenge us later in the race when we have to go and catch them up. But anyway, it's lights out and away we go, and we get an alright start, and it looks like we're going to maintain the lead into turn 1. And behind us, Daniel Ricciardo is trying to overtake Lewis Hamilton, and it looks like he is going to get the position into P3, so our cars are 1-3-0, but Hamilton fights back on the exit of the corner. They're still going side by side, and I think Ricciardo is going to hold out, so it's good news for our team. And we're just going to try and look to pull away in this race. There's already a yellow flag further back, assuming that's because of all of the cars bunching up and probably some of the concertina ring effect. But we're going to continue on in this race. Bottas is pressurising us. He's only just over a tenth behind, but at the end of lap 1 we do lead the way, setting the fastest lap in the process, obviously, as we were first across the line. And at the end of lap 2 we do set another fastest lap, and we're already outside of DRS range of Valtteri Bottas. But then on the next lap he pulls back to within a second, and well, it's already time for us to come into the pits. So at the end of lap 4 we're going to come into the end of our first stint, one of the shortest stints probably do, if not the shortest stint of the season that we'll do. Obviously there could be a shorter stint if we break our front wing after like 1 or 2 laps in and we have to come straight back in again, but in terms of time shown it's probably going to be the shortest stint of the season, because I only shown about 20 seconds of time from those few laps. We were the first to pit, so we're going to come out right at the back and we're going to try and push through the traffic to be able to maintain the undercut and stay ahead of Valtteri Bottas. So first on our list are the 2 Williams cars of Aitken and De Vries, who have basically been fighting in the back all season, so they shouldn't pose too much of a difficulty in trying to pass. We had some more cars in the pit lane, which promotes us up to P18, ahead of our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who also pitted. But anyway, now we're on board with Pierre Gasly, who's trying to go around the outside of Esteban Ocon. So the battle of 2 of the Frenchmen in the sport, as Grosjean is theoretically in the sport as well, but fighting further back. But Gasly is going to try and go around the outside of Esteban Ocon. He probably has a slightly better line, but Ocon's going to try and hold his. And now Gasly does have the inside line and claims the position over Esteban Ocon to move himself up in this race. And now back on board with us, we're going to try and go around the outside of Nick De Vries, and we've just got so much more downforce than he does in that Williams. We should not be able to make a move like that. But Williams need to build a better car, it seems, as they are fighting at the back. Now we need to try and overtake our teammate Jack Aitken. We gave him a slight nudge, but we will have to lift off slightly, otherwise we would have been trying to go side by side with him through that curved section. It wouldn't have ended well, so we waited slightly until we were on the straight, and then we got past him with DRS overtaken, which makes them now way up to P16 in this race, trying to catch up to Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari and the Alfa Romeos and Haas cars. So as we cross the line, we don't quite improve on our personal best, but with more cars coming to the pits, including Lewis Hamilton, who I think I saw go on to hards. So as we set a new fastest lap, it is confirmed the next lap as Bottas also goes on to hards, which means the Mercedes are likely doing a one-stop race, and we're going to need to pull out some gaps to be able to try and make more stops work in this race. So we go up the inside of Charles Leclerc and take that position up into P10. We've now got Nicholas Latifi directly ahead of us, and we're going to try and overtake him as well, as we want to, as I said, build up as much of a gap as possible, as does Ricciardo, who's about 3 seconds behind us, as he is also on the 2-stop. And we're going to need to use our fresh and softer tyres to good effect if we want to beat the Mercedes in this race. I wasn't expecting anyone that starts on the softs to go on the stop, but it seems like both Mercedes feel they have the tyre wear to do so, as we go to the outside and we manage to overtake Nicholas Latifi with relative ease, I would say, but he is in a worse car, so we're expected to do so. And then we've got Romain Grosjean just ahead of us, so we're slightly wide going into the final corner, but it doesn't matter, so we didn't lose too much time. So we head into turn 1. We're going to have a look at Romain Grosjean around the outside, but we think against it. And now we're going to try and go around the outside of the next corner, but he holds firm in his line, and we're just going to have to try and get a better exit and go around the outside. So 3rd attempt around the outside, but it does work this time, and now we move ourselves up to P8 in this Grand Prix. Now on board with the McLaren of Carlos Sainz, and he is going to try and overtake Sebastian Vettel, and he successfully does so, going into the final corner. But Vettel's going to fight back, and he's going to take the inside line going into the final corner, and that's going to allow Lance Stroll, who also is looking to get past these guys, to have move. But in the end, it is Carlos Sainz that's going for his move, and he is going to force his way around the outside and force some space. But Vettel is going to hold firm, but Carlos Sainz squeezes through the gap and is going to go back down the inside. This is a brilliant battle between these two, obviously in real life fighting over the Ferrari seat, but Carlos Sainz does come out on top, as he did in real life for that Ferrari seat. And back on board with us now, we've got George Russell just in front of us, and we're going to look to overtake him on this straight, move ourselves up to P7 in this race, and it should be with relative ease, as we're already alongside before we even deploy DRS, and there isn't even any need for us to try and outbrake him, as we're already ahead going into the corner. Got Kevin Magnussen just ahead, who always seems to be in these episodes just ahead of the Hasses and his teammate Latifi, and he seems to always be carrying that Alfa Romeo forward, but can't quite score any points with it, it seems. He had a good debut in Australia, we finished like P13 or something. On to lap 11 we now go, and we are catching up to Magnussen and Kvyat. And halfway through lap 11, we're going to get DRS on Kevin Magnussen, and we're going to try and go for a move on him here, as he goes slightly defensive, and that's our chance to try and go around the outside of him, as he doesn't get the best exit, and we are able to take the position into P6. And now we've got Danny Kvyat just in front of us, and we're going to look to overtake him to try and put ourselves up into P5 in this race. And like we did on Grosjean, we're going to have a slight look to the outside, but realise that that's not possible. So we're going to run slightly wide and then try and cut back in, but don't get a great exit from it. And Kvyat is going to hold on as we head into the middle sector. Now on board with our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who is looking for a move on Charles Leclerc, who is also in turn looking to move on Nicholas Latifi. So Leclerc goes round the outside of Nicholas Latifi, and as they head towards the final corner, they're going to go side by side through it, and Leclerc is going to have a slightly better exit and gain the position, but Ricciardo is going to look to have a move on both of them here, and Ricciardo pulls to the outside of Charles Leclerc. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, who's undercut his teammate Valtteri Bottas, pulls to the outside of Nicholas Latifi, and Ricciardo completes the move on Charles Leclerc, but Hamilton has to still go side by side with Latifi into the first few corners as we go on board with him. He does manage to complete the move, and is trying to keep tabs with Daniel Ricciardo, which means that Daniel Ricciardo's two-stop is not looking great if he can't even pull out a few second gap over Hamilton. As we're now going to go for a move on Danny Kvyat into the hairpin, and we're now up to P5 behind the Racing Point of Giovinazzi and the Renault of Esteban Ocon. And as we head through the final corner, we get a warning for exceeding track limits, our first of the race. So obviously if we get two more, then we'll get a 3-second penalty. But now we're trying to overtake Antonio Giovinazzi in the Racing Point, and we're going to go up the inside into the hairpin again, just as we did on Danny Kvyat. This time it's a bit closer, as Giovinazzi is still alongside. And as we head into the final corner, we have not finished the move, but luckily he pulls into the pits, and therefore we do not need to make the move. So now we are second in the Grand Prix, just behind Sergio Perez, who leads and is doing the same number of stops as us. Now on board with Lance Stroll, who's trying to overtake Sebastian Vettel here, and he goes up the inside of Sebastian Vettel, and is also going to do one less stop than Sebastian Vettel. He is on hards, whereas Vettel's on mediums. So Stroll is definitely having a much better race than Sebastian Vettel, who did out-qualify him. So Stroll is in a good position to claim a top 5 finish as he is overtaking his rivals. Perez now pits at the end of lap 14 and we take the lead, and as we head on to lap 16 we have a 4-second lead over Ricciardo, a 7-second lead over Hamilton. Hamilton's the more important one, as we come into the pits we're going to need to chase it down. Obviously Ricciardo pitting one lap before us going for the undercut, but he's definitely come out in traffic as he's not even ahead of Carlos Sainz, who was only just ahead of Stroll and Vettel. So Hamilton will take the lead, and Bottas and Verstappen will both also be ahead of us. So therefore we're going to need to make 3 overtakes if we want to try and win this race. Hopefully we will come out just ahead of Sergio Perez, who has managed to overcut quite a few people, but he also manages to stay ahead of us. So we're going to come out in P5 and we're going to need to try and make a quick move on Perez. We have Lance Stroll just behind us. So Perez has had a good race so far as he's overcut Lance Stroll plus a bunch of others, and he's now in a net P4 in this race as he does not need to stop again. But obviously we're expected to overtake him, but hopefully for him he can hold off Stroll or knock on for P5 in this Grand Prix. But on this same lap we are going to go around the outside of Sergio Perez on much fresher and softer tyres in a quicker car, and therefore we will take 4th place in this Grand Prix, and we have 3 more overtakes to try and make if we want to win this Grand Prix, as we do have fresher tyres. So shown by the purple sector we've just set, we need to try and catch up to them. And as we head going into the middle sector, there are yellow flags out and they're ahead of us. So which driver will it be? As we head through the S section, it is shown that Lewis Hamilton is indeed out of the session. So he was first in this Grand Prix and he was the one that I thought we were going to struggle to catch. But now we do not need to catch him as he has had a mechanical failure, and we are now up to P3 in this Grand Prix, and the gap to the lead of Bottas is 7 seconds. So on board with Hamilton here, and his engine just goes up in smoke, like it did in Malaysia a few years ago when he was leading that race. This one's, I'm not sure if it's slightly less important, as I don't think he's really in the title fight anyway after his poor start to the season. But as we set fastest lap, we are catching both Verstappen and Bottas. Now on board with Daniel Ricciardo here, who is trying to overtake Antonio Giovinazzi, and he successfully does so into the hairpin. He's got quite a few overtakes to make if he wants to do well this race, as I'm not sure he's even inside the top 10 right now. But as we move on, we are now within DRS range of Max Verstappen, and 7 laps to go, and now the gap is 2.7 seconds to Bottas, so it's looking much more likely that we will manage to win this Grand Prix. But obviously to catch a car is one thing, to pass a car is another, so we're first going to have to try and overtake Max Verstappen here. So go up the inside into the hairpin, and we do get the move done. Unlike with Giovinazzi, we do get a slightly better exit, and we take the position up into P2, and there's only one car that stands between us and the race victory here at the Chinese Grand Prix. And as we head on to lap 23, we're now in DRS range of Valtteri Bottas, so we have 5 laps to try and make the overtake work. On board with Lance Stroll here, who is trying to overtake Sergio Perez here. So Lance Stroll having a good race, battling both Renaults, and Lance Stroll moves himself up to P4, I believe it is, in this Grand Prix. And later on the lap, Esteban Ocon is also going to have a look on for a move on Sergio Perez, so the Renaults look like they're going to swap positions here as Esteban Ocon tries to go around the outside. Perez fights back up the inside, but Ocon should get the better exit and have the better line into the final corner, and he'll be able to close the door on Sergio Perez and take P5 in this Grand Prix away from Sergio Perez. So now on board with us, and we've got Valtteri Bottas just in front of us, and we're gaining so much time on him that we're going to look for a move round the outside into turn won, and this was probably the move for the race as we went round the outside on a car similar pace to us, but we did have fresher tyres, and that was the lead of the race, and now we've got 4 laps to just try and extend the gap as much as possible. Now on board with Daniel Ricciardo here, who still has a lot of cars to overtake, but Pierre Gasly is the first of them, and he does successfully overtake Pierre, and I think he's running in the lower end of the top 10 now, as he's got a Red Bull just in front of him, of Alex Albon. Obviously we were fighting Max Verstappen, so now our teammate is fighting Alex Albon. He's going to go around the outside into the final corner. I think Albon had made a mistake at the previous corner, but now Daniel Ricciardo is just behind both Renault's battle, I think. So he is now up to P7 in this Grand Prix with his double overtake, and as we move on, he is now going to look to overtake Sergio Perez, and he does successfully do that, so he's now up into P6 in this Grand Prix. I also just noticed that Daniel Ricciardo decided to go on to hards for his final stint, so I don't know what the mechanics on the other side of the garage were thinking when they did that. He probably could be gaining positions at a much quicker rate if he was on mediums, but we're on to lap 27 now, and Ricciardo is still trying to overtake Esteban Ocon, so it's looking increasingly unlikely that he won't even be able to get Lance Stroll, which would be a major disappointment for him, and he'll probably be questioning what strategy the team put him on, as he was ahead of Hamilton early in the race. He was still finishing ahead of Hamilton because Hamilton DNF, but with Hamilton undercutting Bottas and being what would have been the lead Mercedes, Ricciardo could have said, well, if I got on the one stop, then I would be able to have been leading this Grand Prix, but it's going to be us that takes the victory at the Chinese Grand Prix, and our second of the season and second in a row. So, a brilliant performance from us, and we finished in the top 2 at every race so far this season, with 2 second places and 2 first places now. So, good consistency from us as well.
As they make their way up to the podium, a much-deserved victory and a brilliant performance from them all.
So, Valtteri Bottas is second, and Max Verstappen takes Red Bull's first podium of the season with a 3rd place finish. So, Red Bull become the 4th team to take a podium this season after Ferrari and Bahrain, Mercedes and ourselves.
Let's focus on the driver of the day, Anthony Davidson. Who do you pick?
That's got to be the Flying Finn. Wait, how many Flying Fins have we had now? Anyway, I'm talking about Bottas this time. Just great raw speed, and a good job in traffic as well.
It's time to see how things are shaping up in the Constructors' Championship. The current leaders continue to extend their lead at the top. Meanwhile, a strong weekend from Red Bull this time out, and they improve their position in the championship. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport. But with more races lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One.
So we win the Grand Prix ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who somehow wins driver of the day. Max Verstappen takes home a podium for Red Bull, so he'll be happy with that, and Lance Stroll will be happy in the racing point with P4. Ricciardo will be disappointed in P5. He'll know a podium was definitely possible there, and Esteban Ocon will finish P6 in a good day out for Renault that saw Perez also finish 7th. Albon will probably be alright with that result with the Red Bull in 8th, so good points for Red Bull overall in the 3rd and 8th. Pierre Gasly will be happy now for Alphatali with 9th, just getting some more points on the board. Giovinazzi quite a bit behind his teammate, but will still score points 10th. Kvyat is 11th, and then come Charles Leclerc in 12th and Carlos Sainz in 13th. And then Magnussen, who splits the next set of the Ferrari and McLarens with 15th and 16th. So no points for either Ferrari or McLaren this time out. So both teams will be very disappointed with that. Then come the Haas cars of Russell and Grosjean in 17th and 18th. Latifi finishes 19th. Then the 2 Williams cars of Jack Aitken and Nick De Vries. And the only man to DNF in this Grand Prix is Lewis Hamilton, when he probably looks set to win, as he was another 3 seconds up the road from Bottas at that time, and we'd have had to catch him and try and pass him as well. On to the championship standings now, and we extend our lead to 24 points over Daniel Ricciardo, who is only 6 points ahead of Valtteri Bottas now, who is slowly closing in on him. Lance Stroll re-overtakes Hamilton for P4 in the championship, in the Racing Point, just showing that he's had a good season, and Hamilton's just really not been at it so far this season, with a couple of unlucky DNFs and some slightly poor performances. Verstappen moves up to 6th in the championship, with Giovinazzi staying in 7th, as Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris both move down in 8th and 9th. Sergio Perez moves up to 10th, whereas Gasly goes down to 11th, and Albon stays in 12th in the championship, so quite a bit of a way behind his teammate Verstappen. Esteban Ocon moves up to 13th in the championship, closing the gap to his teammate Perez, and Danny Kvyat is 14th. Carlos Sainz and Sebastian Vettel have both had disappointing seasons. Vettel's qualified really highly at some races this season, but his race pace hasn't been great, and he's had some bad strategies as well. Then come the Alfa Romeos, Haas's and Williams cars that are all yet to score so far this season as well. So, in the constructor standings, we lead Mercedes by 64 points now, who are only 30 points ahead of Racing Point, so we're further ahead of Mercedes than Mercedes are of Racing Point, despite the fact that you'd have said it's TSJ Racing and Mercedes, and then the rest. But anyway, then Racing Point are 23 points ahead of Red Bull, who jump up to 4th, with Renault jumping up to 5th, with Ferrari, McLaren and AlphaTauri the big losers there. Obviously, Ferrari and McLaren both failed to score this Grand Prix, so they were always going to struggle to hold on to their respective 4th and 5th positions. And then comes the 3 teams that are yet to score. So we head on to the final screen as the rivalry breakdown. We started the rivalry with Lewis Hamilton, thinking that would be our title challenge for this season, but it hasn't really happened, as he's only on roughly 30 points. So he's going to need to improve in the next races if he wants to get back into the title fight and beat us in the rivalry. But I'm not sure he really cares about beating us in the rivalry. We get over 1.5 million of cash based on the fact that we won that Grand Prix and a bunch of other objectives, which puts us over to 9.2 million. Obviously, we want to keep it at a reasonable cash balance, as we will need to re-sign Daniel Ricciardo mid-season. It'll probably be about 12 to 13 mil to re-sign, so we'll need to keep the cash balance at around this level. But we managed to claim our 2nd victory of the season, so all in all, a good episode. And up next is one of my favourite circuits, so especially as a good addition to the 2020 calendar. And I'll see you guys next time for the Dutch Grand Prix.